People would rather talk about politics or religion
Or sex.
than talk about money?
Yes, that's right.
Why? I mean, why are we so uncomfortable with that topic? Hey everyone, I'm Josh, and this is the In Your Corner podcast from CBS News Philadelphia, where we're all about helping you take control, whether it's better manage your money, spot the latest scams, or just know your rights as a consumer. So, coming off, a lot of us have probably just spent a lot of time with our families for the holidays. And I bet for, a lot of us, those maybe awkward dinner topics came up. But it turns out probably the dinner topic that is guaranteed to give the most heartburn wasn't anything about politics. It's money. Listen to this. A recent Bankrate survey found 3 in 5 people said they would feel uncomfortable talking about their bank account balances, credit card debt, or annual salaries with family or even close friends. Now compare that to some of the other sort of quote unquote typical taboo topics, right? Like politics. But is this uneasiness around financial conversations actually costing us? Well, Maggie Baker is a financial therapist with more than 35 years in the field of psychology and money. She is the author of the book Crazy About Money: How Emotions Confuse Our Money Choices and What to Do About It. Maggie, good to have you.
Oh, it's great to be here, Josh. I'm really excited talking to you.
I got to tell you, I was so excited to connect with you, and I'm so glad we did because, well, first, I don't think I've ever actually met a financial therapist. I've met plenty of therapists along the way. No financial therapist. So, what is a financial therapist? And kind of tell us, how did you even wind up doing this kind of work?
Well, first of all, it's a new field. So that's probably why you haven't heard too much about it. It was founded uh, probably most recognizably in 2009 with the founding of the Financial Therapy Association,
Hmm.
which was an organization that I've been involved with. I was on the board for a couple of years, and they gave it name recognition, and I can tell because from their directory, I got a lot of requests from journalists to talk about what financial therapy was, and that was during 2010 and on. And then it kind of faded because so many other things took over in our culture. And then it started to come back again in the last couple of years because of high inflation, because of the debt that people are carrying, and because of the kind of hangovers of the COVID epidemic. What financial therapy is looking at your beliefs, your attitudes, and your emotions about money. And with the idea that most decisions about money are made not from your head, but from your heart. And people don't realize this. And if they're unaware of why they're making the choices that they're making, they're going to have in some respects, self-defeating behavior. And when that happens, they lose their sense of control and power. So my job is to help people get through all the rough feelings about money that nobody wants to talk about and help them feel empowered about their ability to manage their own finances. And also, if they have a business, to do better with their money in business.
Ooh, okay. So we can get into some stuff here today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. How much time have you
Yeah, exactly. I
got?
know. Well, okay, so let's talk about this survey,
Okay.
Maggie. People would rather talk about politics or religion or sex
You got it.
or sex
Yes. Or sex.
than talk about money?
Yes, that's right.
Why? I mean, why are we so uncomfortable with that topic?
Well, I think part of it is that, first of all, we're human beings. And as human beings, we're very social animals. And being social animals, we're constantly comparing ourselves with other people.
Mhm.
And when you do that, you make judgments, even
Keeping up
if
with the
you,
Joneses, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
And so you make these judgments.
You make these judgments, and I thought, how am I going to describe this to Josh? And I thought, maybe the best way is imagine a world where everybody had a big um, placard on their chest telling what their net worth was and detailing what their debt was and what their average expenses on things that you shouldn't want to have, like alcohol, like
Mm,
entertainment, and all kinds of entertainment and all kinds of adventures that you might have that do not really align that much with your values, but you want to do them anyway. And that way you kind of get a visual of, well, why do I want to share all that about me? This is so intimate, this is so personal, and it's potentially shaming. You know, if you've got a lot of debt, but you feel like you've really got to keep up with the Joneses, you're not going to want anybody to know that. So you might be driving around in a Lexus or BMW, but what's it feel like when you have to pay for that and you don't have the money?
yeah, when that car bill comes due every
Right.
month and you're going, holy cow. So I find it so interesting how psychology and money are so tightly wound in terms of how we even view our own self-worth. We
You got
attach so
it.
much of that
Yes.
to our net worth.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And people have a sense of identity about how they are with money, and they don't necessarily examine it. They just are it. For instance, there's a spender type of person who gets a lot of satisfaction out of just spending, and that's a great feeling. I think we can all share that, but they are a little bit detached from what happens at the end of the month when they get the bill.
Hmm.
Then there's another type of person that's a saver, and they get a lot of satisfaction about watching their money grow. So you can imagine in a couple, if you got one as a spender and one as a saver, and they just have a limited amount of money,
Hmm.
what's going to happen?
Hmm.
And those are the type of people, because it creates a conflict, who end up coming to see somebody like me.
And ironically, I feel like that's always the type of pairing that we wind up with is someone who likes to save and
Right,
someone who likes to spend.
right, right. And
Yeah.
even if you get two spenders, one is going to be slightly more of a
Hmm.
spender, so that makes the other person more of a saver, so they can still get into conflict about it. And you asked how I got into this, because most psychologists don't delve into money very deeply. And how I got into it was I was managing our money, my husband's and my money, because he was more of an academic. He didn't really like to do it, although for 20 years he did it because that's what he was supposed to do. But I thought I was much better at it. But lo and behold, when the market crashed in 2000, I was very overinvested in tech. And I just watched my family lose, a great deal of money. And I just felt horrible because, I was, quote, responsible. And being a woman, women tend to internalize their feelings. So I felt myself to be very much at blame for this. And I went into a depression for about a year and a half. And I thought, I'm supposed to know myself and be aware, but yet look what I did.
Yeah.
And that raised my consciousness about how unconscious I was with my relationship to money. And I thought, woo, this isn't good. And that sent me on a journey of trying to find as much information about finance, about stocks, about how to evaluate them, and what makes a good financial advisor. Because I was with somebody who made investing fun, just like Robinhood does
Hmm.
for the Gen Z generation. And it was so much fun that I got very much in touch with my greedy side, but my containment side took a long vacation, and I had to reconcile all of that. And then I had found a very conservative advisor. And when I was going through all of this, we had kind of become friends. And he said, "Oh, you got to write a book about this because even though you feel like you're the only one that's gone through this. That was how great my own self-absorption was. There were lots of people who were suffering, and he said,
Yeah.
"You got to write this
Yeah.
because it'll really help people."
Wow, that's a huge aha moment for you,
But you're not kidding. It
right?
almost knocked me flat forever.
Holy cow. And that goes to one thing that I wanted to ask, and something that was revealed in this survey. There is a gender divide too in terms of how men and women treat and feel comfortable about discussing money, as you
Yes.
just said, right?
Yes. There is a very interesting study that was done, and they connected people uh, to measure their galvanic skin response, which is a response that people get when they're anxious.
Hmm.
They had a couple come in and talk about money, and you watched the wife, just all over the place with her expressiveness about how worried she was and how angry she was at her husband and this, that, and the other thing. And you watch him, he's sitting there stone faced, and then he kind of slumps down like this, as if he's completely detached and uninterested. When they looked at the galvanic skin responses, he was 3 times more anxious than she was, but he was holding it in, because he's supposed to be the man, he's supposed to be in control, and he
Not
doesn't
express
consult
your
his
emotions. Yeah.
feelings the way women tend to.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was really a revelation to me to actually see that in a
Hmm.
couple.
Is there also, though, something to be said about men being more, because of that type of framework and sort of societal expectations, gender expectations, that if men are talking about money, um, they're maybe more comfortable in terms of, because they're the ones who are expected to be the breadwinner, or they'll be more willing to talk about if they're making money or not versus women.
Oh, but how are they talking about money? And what a guy typically would do is, "Hey, I went to this great party and I got a really hot tip about a stock." And he starts bragging about, he's got the in on this stock and he's going to make a lot of money. Well, who knows? We don't have any proof about whether he even bought it, but he's bragging about it. And that's how men tend to talk. They much more competitive with each other. And
Okay.
it's like, I got the inside story here.
So not necessarily honestly about it if they
Right.
are talking about
No,
it.
no, I'm talking about being authentically honest.
Okay.
Like, oh my gosh, this is my situation and it's painful and I don't know what to do about it. So I'll keep spending.
Makes it feel better in the moment, right?
Right, exactly.
So, you deal with a lot of couples, right? In your
The majority of the people who break down the barriers to come and see me
Mhm.
are couples.
Isn't money like the number one thing that they say that couples usually argue about, or finances?
Either that or they don't want to talk about it because it
Mm.
brings up so much negativity. And what I suggest when they say that, and that's usually what they say, that they get into these arguments and they can't resolve them. And I give them some boundaries to talk about it. For instance, only talk about it when you have a meeting, and when you have a meeting, only make it an hour, and don't do it late at night.
Putting guardrails on it
Right, right, right.
to, again, remove some of that maybe emotion that we attach it
Exactly,
to.
exactly.
So, in addition to the gender divide, there's also a very interesting and noteworthy generational divide in terms of who feels comfortable talking about this topic, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen this in your own work.
Well, I haven't seen that many young people, but I know from the burden that they're carrying that they're very, very confused about money because they've grown up in a pretty prosperous time. And they probably, as a generation, are not going to do as well materialistically than their parents, but mainly because of the student loan debt that they
Hmm.
carry. Maybe even their expectations, because they've had it pretty easy growing up, and they expect that that's what's going to be coming down the pike for them. But in fact, that's not what happens because the parents, even though they have done well,
Hmm.
have all kinds of pressures. They've got their own retirement to think about. They've got their parents to maybe take care of, and they've got more kids. So they're overwhelmed.
Hmm.
And that comes down to the Gen Z, and they want information about it. But if they go to social media, there's so much miscommunication. Just to give you a little story about Robinhood, some young person was delighted with Robinhood because it kept going up, and every time they bought a stock and it went up, they got a hit of dopamine, and that felt really, really
Sure.
good.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden it started to go down, and they were really confused by that. And this one person was talking to her boss and was just really upset and said, "But it's not supposed to go down." And the boss looks at her and said, "You're in the stock market. Stock market goes up and then it goes down. And you didn't know that. You thought it would only just keep going up."
Yeah, well, and I've explored that a lot in my own reporting, that gap in just basic financial literacy too. But interesting that you bring up that Gen Z are very hungry for that information, because I've been to schools where these students, they're introducing these financial literacy courses, and these students love it. They want to learn this stuff
Yes.
because they want to set themselves up, hopefully, to be better off, and to know just what investing actually is.
Right,
Hmm.
exactly. But they don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
And they can get the information, they can go to Chat GPT or another AI and get the factual information. But they need a person to help sort through even
Mhm.
accurate factual information and give them a sense of how you go through the process of investing and what your expectations should be. And that's what's missing.
Well, and I feel like it's very tough too, because a lot of this, I mean, look, I acknowledge, I'm very grateful. I was very privileged to grow up in a house where we were well, we were candid about a lot of stuff at the dinner table, actually. But in particular, we were candid about money, and my parents were open about that. And I was lucky enough to never really ever need want for anything. But I grew up in Michigan, in the Detroit area during the Great Recession, the auto industry. I mean,
Oh.
that was a kind of a pivotal point in my coming of age, and so I remember a lot of that. But my point being that a lot of this starts young, and it starts at home, right? And if you're missing some of that foundational support or awareness, it makes it that much harder, right, as you become an adult to get a handle on money, and how it works and how to use it to your advantage,
Well,
right?
one of the things that I outline in my book is that what parents think is education for about money, like teaching what a coin is worth or what a credit card is about,
Hmm.
etc. Those are facts and those are really important to have, but the most important thing in terms of setting somebody up emotionally
Hmm.
is not that, but it's how the child picks up the emotional climate of the environment. So if a kid sees mom cry when she looks at the credit card bill, or the dad gets mad when she overspends, or vice versa, the impact of the emotion, what is that telling the kid? And for instance, just to give you an example, a lot of kids who think that they grew up poor
Hmm.
uh, have the idea that they just don't want to be poor as adults. They want to be rich. So they make a vow to themselves, I'm going to be rich when I'm grown up. So they grow up, one, say, becomes an entrepreneur. And as an entrepreneur, they build a business really good. And then all of a sudden, when it's going very well, they get bored with it and they fall off in interest, and they can't figure out why they're doing that, but then they decide, well, I'm going to start a second business because I'm bored with this one.
Hmm.
They do that, and guess what happens? They get spread so thin, both of them start to go down, and that was the reason that they came to see a financial therapist, because they were afraid of losing all this money
Hmm.
and all the time that they put into these businesses. So they work, and what comes out is that the owner of the building, the
The
building,
business.
the business, uh, felt that once poor, always poor. That was unconsciously driving his behavior because he felt growing up poor, what he felt was poor, would continue for the rest of his life. And he couldn't imagine that he could be different from that,
Even when he was.
even when he was, but he was setting himself up to fail because he started to get uninterested in his business and it started to go down.
Hmm.
And that's obviously scared him.
But did that uninterest stem from that sort of unconscious?
The unconscious belief that once poor, always poor.
Wow.
It just kept playing in his mind. And once he understood that, oh my gosh, he saw what he was doing. So he was able to sell the second business and completely commit himself to the first. And it zoomed up because he was free of that belief that was carried over from childhood into his adult behavior that once poor, always poor.
So more about the kind of environment and the belief and feelings associated with money at a young age that instills where you wind
Exactly.
up, which maybe that explains why I'm such a saver. My formative years were during the Great Recession, and that that was very impactful.
Yes, and that's true of people who grew up during the Depression during the
Sure.
30s. Even as 60 and 70-year-olds, they're extremely conservative investors because they never want to experience the level of poverty that they experienced during the Depression.
That fear is still there deep
Yeah,
down.
yeah. But those are the things that I work with. So I can help free people from those irrational fears that don't feel very irrational. They feel very, very real to the person.
Yeah, and in through my years of therapy, I've learned, but being able to acknowledge and recognize the why behind it, right? That's the empowering
Right,
part.
right.
Is you can actually start to explain to yourself what's causing this, and that you're in the position to control it,
Yes,
right?
yes. And that was, I mean, certainly true of me. I didn't realize how greedy I was.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because when this advisor who was very, very enthusiastic about tech stocks, I thought, oh, this is great, and I really,
You're seeing dollar signs.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
seeing big ones.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden I realized, when I lost all of that, my reaction to the loss was, you know, very, very significant to get into a year-long depression. Um, but also that pain taught me, about myself. And now I'm probably one of the most diversified people financially that you could ever meet.
We love to hear that.
Yeah.
We love diversification. Yeah. So, I mean, look then. So does that mean that we all just need to go through therapy on this, or?
Well, in my mind, sure. I mean,
Actually, yeah, I would say everyone needs a therapist, but not everyone agrees with that. Well, so okay, so I mean, how can we at least practically start to learn to feel comfortable to even just have these conversations?
I think to realize that you're not alone, that everybody has these apprehensions, has these you know potential feelings of shame and embarrassment, and that's a really good question. I think just being able to be honest with yourself, and if you have the support of somebody who's going to be non-judgmental, compassionate, and empathic, then you can more easily open up. And I would encourage everybody to think that they are a worthy, worthwhile person, no matter how much money they have, and that their sense of self should not derive from the dollar signs that they carry around in their head. And if they can get that message across, then it makes it easier to talk about something that you don't feel bound to identity wise that will, make you feel awful about yourself if, quote, anybody knew.
And it's important too, I think, and you said it in terms of if you're gonna have the conversation, you do have to find the right person to have the
Exactly.
conversation with. Well,
Exactly.
how did you do that? How did you find the right person to have that conversation with?
Well, I think part of it was, I'm a pretty intuitive person and I know when somebody's genuine.
Hmm.
So I kind of let my gut be the boss
Gut,
there.
your gut be your guide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been lucky. I've been very lucky. But I'm the type of person that has, I like to reach out. I grew up in a very, very chaotic family and there were no guardrails. And I learned very early that some people outside of my family have better advice for me than those in my family. And you start that young enough, you have kind of a sense about other people. And that has really helped me a lot. And I think also people, if they can accept that everybody makes mistakes, but it's how you handle the mistakes, number one, and that most people learn to be different going through pain, and that pain is not fun, but it's not lasting forever. The way it gets lasted forever is if it's shoved down and not dealt with. So what I would say is cut yourself a break if you are getting anxious about what's happening with your money. Take a step back, take a few really deep breaths, check in, what do I really want, and how can I really get that? And that kind of helps just slow down people and cut through ruminations and super anxiety. You got to shift yourself out of it, and sometimes that feels very hard, but it's you got to practice it.
Hmm.
You got to do the work.
Well, yeah, and you've got to put yourself in those uncomfortable spaces sometimes, right? To find your way out.
Right, right.
But the idea that pain can be a very powerful motivator.
Motivator and pain is your friend in a way.
Yeah.
If you can befriend pain in a way of saying, I can stand this, I can go through this because I know it's not going to last forever. It only lasts forever if I don't look at it.
Yeah. It's just I know that there are just so many people though who um, the willingness to actually deal with it, to just deal with it and recognize it. That's tough. I mean, I know people like that, people in my own family, friends,
Yeah.
and you want to like shake them, and I don't know if how do you get through to someone who just doesn't want to deal with, doesn't want to face it. It's too much. It's too scary.
I would probably say, you know, I understand how scared you might be. And I hope you find a way to be less scared at some point. But I can't convince you to be different. You have to recognize that you need to be different. And if there's anything I can do to help, fine, just let me know. You're in control.
I was gonna say yeah, they've got to be willing to
Yes.
to to make the step, take the
Yeah.
step.
I mean, I think I just love the idea of helping people feel more empowered and helping people get out of the sense of victimization that they are so overburdened
Mm.
that they can't liberate themselves when I know it's possible to do that
That they have more control over their situation than they.
if they only take the step to use it
Hmm.
and to do the work. There is work involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I just imagine it can be very hard though if you are in a position where you are living paycheck to paycheck and you have a family to support. Some might look at that and say, well, yeah, easier said than done, but the reality, the day-to-day reality is I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I'm struggling.
Well, and I would suggest that if they feel they're that overwhelmed and there's nothing that they can do, if they have a trusted friend, if they have a trusted priest or pastor,
Mhm.
go talk to them. You know, but don't be afraid to reach out for something.
I guess the key is you don't have to do it alone,
No, exactly.
and you shouldn't do it alone.
Exactly. No, I don't think anybody can do it alone. I certainly couldn't do it alone. And I've got more training up the gazoo than you
So
could possibly
you've got a
imagine.
PhD, Maggie. Like, if you can't, there's no hope for the rest of us.
But that's true. It was very shocking, but it was only in this sector of money that I had such a collapse. You know, I'm a pretty resilient person, but that really clobbered me. And that's why I got so interested in this, because I thought, you know, I had everything pretty much under control with all my training.
Little did you know.
Little did I know.
Maggie, thank you so much for coming in and talking about it. It's fascinating. And I wish that more people wanted to have this conversation. Maybe this will spark some people to do that.
Well, if they don't want to talk to me, okay, but read my book.
There's the plug. We'll put a link as well down in the bio below. Maggie Baker, financial therapist with more than 35 years in the field of psychology and money, and the author of Crazy About Money, which you just said. Crazy About Money, How Emotions Confuse Our Money Choices and What to Do About It. Thanks, Maggie.
You're very welcome.
And that'll do it for this episode of the In Your Corner podcast here on CBS News Philadelphia. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. If there's a topic that you want to hear us talk about, or a question that you had maybe about today's episode, our inbox is always open. You can email inyourcorner@cbs.com. I'm Josh. Thanks for watching.